I'm aiming for with coasting and with drawing, what I'm aiming for is to have a vertical shaft. So vertical shaft, and I'm steering the nose of the canoe when I'm in set 1 and 2. Okay, I'm steering the nose, so when I put the paddle into the water, I need the blade angled to a position that I'm taking the nose to. Okay? I'm not putting the paddle in parallel to the hull. Okay, so that was the first key aspect of inefficiency with all of you. Okay, so I'll get some bang for my buck by putting the paddle in here, but nowhere near as much as if I put the paddle into the water on the angle that I want to take the nose to. Okay? And I'm aiming for a vertical shaft. Okay? Not because I'm putting a keel into the water. Yeah? We don't see too many yacht keels on this angle. Okay, it's vertical is what we're aiming for. I'm aiming for vertical and I'm aiming for angle. I'm not aiming for getting the paddle as far away from the boat as I can. No, that does not add any more effective. In fact, you're working against yourself by putting the paddle into the water on an angle. Okay, nowhere near the same amount of pivot. Okay, so I'm aiming for vertical, angle, and I need to be able to hold that paddle position in the water, and so to do that, the only way I can do that is by anchoring my lower body into the canoe. What I'm doing, so you need to come forward so you can see what my feet are doing. What I'm doing is I am sliding my left foot up onto the side of the canoe. The side, not the bottom, the side. For the purpose of pushing my leg into the side here. So I've got my left foot back in here, even though I'm on the left side. Okay. My right foot is directed, the position of it is directed by me needing to get my hip around to be more square on to the blade. There. Okay, if I put the paddle in on this angle and I try and keep both buttocks on the seat, then I'm only going to get to here and my hips are facing there. Okay, so if this was a rectangle, from my hips up to my shoulders, if that's a rectangle, I want my whole rectangle to come here, not here. Otherwise it's very difficult for me to hold that. Once 1 and 2 put their paddles down in the water, you're becoming the pivot point around which the rest of the canoe and the weight of that canoe is swinging. Okay, so it's a lot of resistance, and I can't take up that resistance. I'm going to either do this to reduce the resistance, or I'm going to do this and reduce the resistance. And then I reduce the effectiveness of the pivot. Okay, so I'm aiming for this, to be able to hold that. I've got my foot up there, and I'm lifting my buttock and swiveling my hip here. So in seat 2, my knee comes down to here, my other foot comes up against here. Okay, but that's where my leg is getting to because of where I'm taking my hip to. Okay, it's not about me positioning my leg, because I could do that and I haven't brought my hip around, Okay, so I'm lifting my buttock and pivoting my hips to be able to do this. So I'm sitting tall. I'm not down in here trying to hold. I'm holding myself in there with my legs. So an easy indication of whether or not you're achieving that is I should be able to lever myself up and down by pushing my leg into the side. And I can only do that if my foot's up against the side, not on the flat of the floor. Okay, so I'm levering myself up and down by pushing my leg into, my left leg into the left side of the canoe to do that.
And so you're posting like 1.5 away from the hull?
Yep, good question, Carrie. The amount of extension I have with my bottom arm in a forward stroke is the only amount of extension I need away from the canoe.
Okay, so
I'm not coming out here and then trying to go for more.
right.
Yeah. And then I end up with my ribs, you know. I'm not trying to do a muffin grip down here on the gunnel. I'm sitting tall, holding myself up. My blade is buried, but I'm not trying to get my bottom hand in the water. Okay, I don't need to do that if I've anchored myself in with my feet and my legs. But that's the position I'm aiming for. Okay. When I go from a post into a draw, so I'm here posting, my first motion is to go down because I want the first movement of water towards the canoe to go under the canoe, not into the side of the canoe. So I take the time to go down, and then I lever myself back up with my legs, and I'm locking my arm off, and I'm doing this. Okay, I'm not out here trying to do this with my arms. I'm using my whole torso as a lever. Okay, so I'm here posting. My arms are holding the same position through the entire movement. So I'm using my torso, so I take the paddle down into the water with my whole torso. Okay, so I'm taking my chest down there as well, locking my arms off, and then levering myself up with my legs. And I take the paddle out of the water about this far away. So that was the second point of inefficiency with you all, was I want to say all of you, you'd review that, is when you were drawing, you had your paddles angled there. And you were trying to draw from this angle. Okay, you need the paddle on this angle when you're drawing. Okay. And the other significant aspect of efficiency is this top arm elbow. Okay, I've got my elbow down so that I can take up the resistance. Okay, so that's a lot of resistance when you're trying to pull that nose around. It would be like you carrying a big load like this. Okay, you're going to have your elbow lower when you're taking up that resistance. You should not be able to see under your elbow. Okay, so I'm not tucking my elbow in. I'm keeping the same amount of bend that you've had, but when I go into the water, my elbow is here. Okay. And then sitting up. Sitting up. Not this, because at that point, you're doing that because you haven't anchored yourself in with your legs. Right? So that's the how-to. Anne was asking about seat 5. I was in seat 5. I am, so I'm in seat 5, facing the front. If that is 12 o'clock, okay, straight down towards the nose of the canoe, then I am drawing between 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So I'm drawing out here. My arm is out there, but to get the paddle deep, I am taking my body down onto the side of the canoe, not out over here. Okay, because I don't want to take the risk of lifting the umma if I'm not drawing in time with the others. So yeah, somebody of Anne's weight would likely get away with, and it sounds like she has, of coming a bit further out. However, I would remind, by out I mean out over the side of the canoe. However, I would remind you that like this canoe here is probably, I would say, well, how many pounds would you say this is? About 400 pounds. Okay. That Hydra is about 220 pounds. It's 56 kilo. Okay, so I've been working in Singapore for the last month and working with some older people programs, junior programs, where we take the boat down and rig it on the beach, I could carry the hull down by myself. It's less than 56 kilo. Okay, so you're talking about a light canoe. So very light. So you're getting away with coming out to the side, I would suggest, because the boat in Amma is so heavy.
And the position of your feet is what you would use in...
No, just where they were, Anne, where they were. So you'd have your right foot forward still. And it's more about how you get the depth of the paddle to give to be getting some water going under the canoe.
Can you do it one more time with
Yeah.
you leaning on the...
Yeah, so I've got my arm out here and I'm doing that draw from if that's 12 o'clock, I'm between 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock in terms of where I'm starting the paddle into the water. My paddle is angled back towards my backside, and to get the depth I am crunching down. So I'm crunching down and taking my body weight towards the gunnel as opposed to out over the paddle. So I'm not trying to get my weight out over the paddle. Okay, my arm is there and my hand is there, but I'm taking my body weight down here,
Okay,
down onto the side of the canoe to get the depth. I'm watching that far left buoy. So initially I start my draw out here, but I'm watching that far left and I'm watching the nose swing. And so as I can see that the nose is starting to come around, I reduce the angle of my draw. Okay, so the more that out to the side I am, the more I'm helping with the pivot, but the less I'm helping with forward speed. But I want to come back to helping with forward speed as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm starting out here in terms of how far out to the side, but as I can see that the nose is coming around, I reduce the angle to draw here. I can see, okay, I don't have to help with the pivot anymore. I come back into a forward stroke. So that's why you would want seat 5 also looking to the far left, so they can judge how much of an angle to be drawing at and the moment at which they can also be coming back in to help seats 3 and 4 with the forward speed. You want them back in as soon as possible to help with that. Okay?
Can I ask a question about 2 again?
Yeah.
After you do the post, do you then do some drawing or you don't draw?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. You've got 2 types of strokes in terms of category of stroke. You've got a stationary stroke and you have a moving stroke. A stationary is referring to the paddle being stationary. Okay? So a stationary stroke would be a post or a rudder. So when seat 6 is doing a rudder, that's a stationary stroke. When you do an uni, you just hold the paddle in the water, that's a stationary stroke. Post is a stationary stroke. A forward stroke is a moving stroke. A draw is a moving stroke. So when I'm posting, I'm doing a stationary stroke. I turn it into a draw, it's a moving stroke. The basic rule of thumb is boat moving, paddle not moving, stationary, or rudder. Boat slowing down or boat not moving, paddle moving. Okay, so there is no one size fits all. It is relevant to how much boat speed is there. So that's why there's not a one size fits all formula, because there's too many variables. What kind of approach angle has your steerer taken? Is there a wind which impacts on the boat coming to more of a standstill? Okay. So you're only judging whether to be posting or drawing based on boat speed.
Boat moving, paddle still.
And so I'm judging that by how much resistance if I can feel resistance on the paddle, that's because there's boat speed. I feel the resistance dropping off, then I'll start moving the paddle. The amount that I move the paddle in the draw is relevant to how much boat speed. Okay, so if I feel the boat speed starting to drop, then I'm only going to draw